All right, this video is about chapter 4.3, triangle congruence by angle, side, angle, and angle, angle, side. So we've already learned two ways that we can prove triangles congruent without having to prove all of the corresponding angles and sides congruent. And they were side, 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 and side, angle, side. Today we're going to find two new ways. The first is angle, side, angle. So if two angles and the included side of one triangle, so that means the side right in between the two angles, and they are congruent to the two angles and the included side of another triangle, then we know that the two triangles are congruent. Okay, so here's a picture of it. If we did this, we would have angle, the next side, so again, it has to be the side right next to it, and then the next angle that's immediately after, that would be angle, side, angle. Those triangles would be congruent to each other. All right, so which triangles are congruent by angle, side, angle? We're going to do a little bit of an elimination as we're looking at it. So let's try the first two. We have angle, 1 mark, side, the next side has one tick mark, and then 2 angle marks, so angle, side, angle. That looks like those triangles are congruent. So now we need to, and I can see, by the way, that it's not the third triangle, but because you see that the side is not included between the two angles. It's not the one marked right in the middle of the two angles that are marked. Okay, so now that I know that it's these first two triangles, now I have to write a congruence statement. So I'm going to say that the first triangle is triangle SUV. And it doesn't matter about the first one, but the second one now, I have to fill in these three letters in the same order. So S was the angle on this triangle that has no marks. So that needs to match with N, which is the angle on this triangle that has no marks. Okay, U has 1 angle mark. That has to match with E, has 1 angle mark. V has 2 angle marks, that has to match with O, okay? And so I can see that those triangles are congruent by angle, side, angle. All right, same thing, angle, side, angle. I can immediately see that it can't be this middle triangle because in this middle triangle, this side, again, is not in between. It has to be in between the 2 angle marks. So I can say immediately it's not this one. Let's double check the others. Angle, 1 mark, side, 1 mark, angle, 2 marks. Okay, so those triangles are congruent. So now I'm going to write my congruence statement. Triangle HOG is congruent to triangle. Again, I like to do it as like almost like a little fill-in. And I just say to myself, okay, well, if I did H has 2 angle marks, so that has to match with A, which has 2 angle marks. O has 0 angle marks. It's not marked at all. So that has to match with T, which has no angle marks. And then finally, G has 1 angle mark. That should match with angle C. All right, we're going to do a little bit of a proof. I am going to take it for granted that you are going to rewrite all of those things and that your reason will be that they are given. You should also then mark the picture. They've already marked it for us in this case. They told us that angle CAB is congruent to angle DAE. Side segment BA is congruent to EA, and that angle B and angle E are right angles. Okay, so it looks like they're already ready to be congruent by angle, side, angle, but what we have to realize is that angle B and E, we are not told that they are congruent, we are told that they are right angles. And before you can use angle, side, angle, you need to say that those angles are congruent. So I'm going to say angle B is congruent to angle E. And what is the reason? All right angles are congruent. So again, it makes sense, and if you just mark the picture with those sort of squares that indicate that they're right angles, it feels like we already know that they're congruent, but the proof has to say that. So that's us saying it. And now that we have that, I think we have enough to say that these triangles are congruent. And again, I'm going to use the congruence statement they gave me so I don't have to stress myself out here about matching up the letters, and I can see that they are congruent by angle, side, angle. All right, finally, another way we have to prove triangles congruent is angle, angle, side. So if 2 angles and a non-included side of one triangle are congruent to 2 angles and the corresponding non-included side of another triangle, then the 2 triangles are congruent. Let's take a look at a picture of what that would look like. So this is going to be angle, angle, side. So again, I start at one end. I'm not going to start with this angle because if I went angle, angle, I'd be skipping over a side. So I look at the marks that are there and I'm going to start at one side of them. And so since I'm looking and thinking it's angle, angle, side, I want to start with an angle. So angle, angle, the next angle, and then the next side right next to it, that is angle, angle, side. These triangles are congruent to each other. All right, so in a proof, again, the first step I'm going to do is to write down all of the given information. I'm told that angle M is congruent to angle K, and I'm told that segment WM is parallel to segment WK. Again, they happen to mark that in the picture for us. Make sure that you are thoughtful to mark it on your own. Well, when I look at this picture, I see that I do know that segment RW is congruent to itself by reflexive property. That gets me an angle on its side. I'm not quite there yet, but remember what I've told you, that when you see parallel lines, you should think angles, because remember our chapter on parallel lines was about angle relationships. So if I see that these two lines are parallel, there are three different transversals that go through them, but we are often going to be using the one that's going to create alternate interior angles. So I can see that this angle here is congruent to this angle here, and that would get me that these triangles are congruent by angle, angle, side. So now I have to write all that into my proof. So I'm going to say that segment RW is congruent to segment RW, and my reason is reflexive property. And then I'm going to state that angle MWR is congruent to angle KRW, and my reason is alternate interior angles theorem. Notice I have to call them, name these angles with three letters. I can't call this angle W, for example, because there are many angles there that have W as its vertex. So I do need three angles. So now that I have that, I think we have everything we need. I can say that these triangles are congruent. Again, don't feel you need to reinvent the wheel. You can copy the congruent statement that we were given. And my reason is going to be angle, angle, side. Okay. Here we're given that angle S is congruent to angle Q, and we are told that RP bisects angle SRQ. These are given. I'm going to mark the picture. Angle S is congruent to angle Q. RP bisects angle SRQ. So this is angle SRQ. When an angle is bisected, it is split in half. So that means that each of these angles on its side are congruent to each other. So if I was going to say that in my proof, I would say angle SRP is congruent to angle PRQ, and my reason would be definition of a bisector. In other words, they've told me that RP is a bisector, and a bisector splits an angle or a segment in half, and so therefore the two pieces have to be congruent to each other. Finally, the only geometric knowledge we can add to this picture, is that PR is congruent to PR, which again we know by the reflexive property. And once I look at my markings on my picture, I hope you'll see that we can say that these triangles are congruent by angle, angle, side. So triangle SRP is congruent to triangle QRP by angle, angle, side. Okay. Let's skip here. Let's see. Well, number 7, would we know that these triangles are congruent? So far we only have one angle mark and one side mark. So we want to add whatever geometric knowledge we have. Well, I can see that we have vertical angles, and we know vertical angles are congruent. So once I have that, I hope you can see that these triangles are congruent by angle, angle, side. Angle, angle, side. So that is a yes.